大家好，这位就是老公的朋友 Chris， 他先在自家门前自我介绍一下。如果不懂英语的朋友，可以打开 CC 字幕了解他讲解的内容。
My name is Chris Helt. I am a Union County citizen. We've lived in Union County for about 12 years now, having moved from Anderson County, my wife and I. And we lived in a rural setting there, but we decided that we wanted a farm for our own and to construct a home that would suit our needs exactly and not have to try to modify something. So we moved here in 2009. We have a 14-acre farm here, and we built a Georgian-style home, which you can kind of see in the background. You'll notice that it has functional shutters, and that's indicative of our train of thought, because she and I are both historians of such, and we really enjoy recreating and focusing on early American to late Victorian American history. And so a lot of the furniture, well, all of the furniture actually, for the most part, and the style is based on those types of construction methods and styles. It's utilitarian, meaning that we can use it and it's functional. It's not just for looking at, like some people. My mother had a home where you had furniture in the living room and nobody sat on it or used it. It was like, it never made any sense to me. So we're the opposite of that, so to speak. So we both work regular jobs, but we work here when we're not at work. It's a labor of love, you could say. I really enjoy farming. We grow corn and pumpkins and a variety of vegetables. We farm, cut hay and bale it and sell that also. In between that, we're cutting firewood. My wife makes some homeopathic products, which are all organic, that come from things from the land, and that type of thing. Plus the maintenance here, it keeps us busy. And the amount of maintenance is far more than I had ever imagined. It's constant. But there again, it has to be a labor of love. So I'm in the middle of constructing an unusual project called a Cantilever Barn. The history behind the Cantilever Barn, actually, its origins are in Germany or Germanic countries, and the settlers brought the settlers brought that over from Germany and Scandinavia and down into Pennsylvania. You'll still see traces of it. They're called 4-bay barns. Right. There's a version of a cantilever barn, but the cantilever barn is actually unique to the Appalachians, the Southern Appalachians only. You'll find them primarily in Blount and Sevier County, Tennessee. Occasionally you'll find a spattering in Southwest Virginia, or maybe even Southern Kentucky and North Carolina.
Yeah, I can add one thing is Chris' family originated from Germany.
Germany.
So Chris can speak some German.
不好意思，德国。
Yeah, my origins are Scandinavia, Germany, England. My family, I'm sixth generation Tennessean, both sides, maternal and paternal. But they were here before Tennessee was a state, so my people go even back further than that. So
yeah, that's very long.
It's not compared to China, obviously, but for here it's a long time. They came into the country probably in the early 1700s, it looks like, and settled, filtered down from Virginia back then. This was part of the North Carolina territory, and then for a while the state of Franklin, and then the state of Tennessee in 1794. So my people have been here since before Tennessee was a state. Primarily mountain people. A lot of mixture of Native American in my family lineage, and so it was very common. A lot of my people lived with the Indians, and vice versa. So interesting heredity there. But the barn, back to the barn, the Cantilever Barn, being primarily in Blount and Sevier County, Tennessee, you wonder, well, why would that be? Well, it's because the nature of the barn is utilitarian. It's not like barns you see today on most farms, where you'll see a tall black barn, which is a tobacco barn made just specifically for hanging tobacco and drying tobacco. Or you'll see a dairy barn, which is designed with stalls for cattle, for milking. Or you'll see some barns that just for hay storage and so forth. The Cantilever Barn wasn't that. It was designed to do all things, because most of the people that lived here in the mountains or in East Tennessee were very isolated, and they were subsistence farming, meaning they had they lived by what they grew. They couldn't go down to the Walmart and get what they needed. Everything pretty much had, and it was so far between neighbors. They bartered some, they traded some, but they mostly grew and ate what they grew by livestock or crops.
Okay.
And so they had to put those things in the barn, and it had to be multifunctional. Let's go down here and I'll show you.
So here is the barn.
This is the barn. This project has been going on for about 3.5 years.
Oh,
And the reasons are multiple. Not just because of the difficulty of construction, but because other things happen and you have to do other things. In other words, life intervenes. You see, I've got haying equipment here and whatnot, but then, I have to cut firewood and I have to do maintenance on other things, and so you work on it as you can. But all the lumber and all the timber that you see incorporated in this barn came from our property on the other side of the Hines Creek. If you go down the bottom, there's a creek there. That's Hines Creek, and then up to Pine Ridge. And these are called pens. P-E-N-S. And what the pens are designed for is holding livestock or equipment.
Okay.
So when it's completed, there will be a small door cut here on each one of them, so that I can get inside here, and it'll be a dirt floor. Get inside here, and then I can put either livestock or I can store equipment in it.
Okay.
And that's the design for it. But you see how the cantilevers hang out over the sides, and they're not supported. And that's what cantilever means. And you have two types. The ones that are running from here out, you see, they don't extend into the building.
Cantilever, yeah.
And they extend out. Those are called the primary cantilevers. And then the ones that come across this way are called the secondary.
Because you set on the top of that cantilever.
That's right. All of the timber in here is primarily poplar or sweet gum and yellow pine. And the reason for that is because those species tend to grow really straight and long and have had the necessary strength that we need.
But you don't use the oak?
No, oak is so heavy,
Yeah.
it's just hard to handle. You could, but and plus if oak starts to move, it's hard to keep it from twisting, and it'll move everything. Whereas you can get poplar or sweet gum in place, and if it'll the weight of the other beams will kind of keep it steady.
Okay.
There are a few oak logs in here on the pens, but for the most part,
not a major difference.
I put some oak down here at the bottom on that one for sure, because they have a higher rot resistance, being close to the ground.
For the connection, you have that.
Yes.
They call it the pin. So you
It's called pegging. So what you would do, and I meant to bring a brace bit. I can get one here in a little bit. So that you drill
a hole.
Drill a hole through, and of course, unlike furniture construction where your lumber is kiln dried, this is not. So it's green. Oh yeah, you don't have any choice. I mean, you couldn't wait for it to dry. If it did, it'd twist off pieces. So what you have to do is you have to offset your holes just a little bit. So like this is called a mortise. And let's find a closer one for you here to see. Well, here's where you can see this peg a little better. You can see the peg right here. So a mortise and tenon, what that means is that this secondary bottom beam here has a square cavity pocket in it. and the beam that comes down has a tongue that goes down in that pocket, and it has a hole drilled in it. So when they come down, the hole on the tongue that comes down is a little bit longer than further down than the hole that goes across, so that when you drive the peg in, it pulls it tight. Because if you just you can just drill it straight through, but you don't have, so if it starts to move, it's not as tight of a joint. So I'll set it by about 1/16 of an inch. And the pegs, if you'll notice, let's see if I can find some that are sticking out. Anywhere up here you can see they're tapered. See how they're, you can see these have come all the way through, and they're tapered on the end. So you really have to have that tapered, or it'll bust the wood out on the back. To drive the pegs, this is a homemade hammer. It's
wood.
This is made from black locust. It's Robina pseudoacacia is the Latin, and it was highly cherished in the old days because of it's super hard and highly rot resistant. They used it a lot for fence posts because they didn't have to do anything to it.
Heavy.
Yeah, I use that mainly for driving pegs and for using my chisels to make the mortise and tenons in the beams.
Density could be more close to water. Could be put into water.
Yeah, it almost sinks.
Almost.
It's so dense. Yeah, the specific gravity so high it almost sinks. For the heavier duty stuff, this is the mallet, the wood mallet. This was originally a piece of oak that I cut, and you can see where it's. Yeah, that's lasted for years and years. This also you see a number of different types of equipment here, and of course this is old school pioneer style equipment. But what's interesting is that a lot of times, in fact more times than not, modern equipment like the chainsaw or the skill saw are not as efficient. It takes longer to do the work with them than it does with, say, an axe, because you can take off huge amounts of material quickly with an axe, but not with a chainsaw. So we have a different types of hand tools here. This type of construction that you see on these pins is very unique. It exists. I've seen. You don't see it very often. It's called the teardrop method, and its design is for speed. When you have to get something out quickly, because most of the barns and cabins that you'll see in Appalachia were hand hewn. They were square. And the reason for that was so that they could make the timber even, like these are square. Because if each log here is shorter at one end than the other. You've got a big end and a small end, and so that causes problems. So by hewing it, you eliminate that. Also, it made it easier to chink, like you see there, the chinking in between the logs on the tool shed. So you had a big flat surface there to hold that chinking. And then, of course, it made it lighter. And light is good, believe me. When you're up here trying to put stuff in place, yes, definitely. In fact, the next part of the project, I'm ready to start putting the rafters on, but I've got to build a scaffold to where I can get up there and put them in place. So because so I've got to do that, and that's part of what this log's for.
So you mean mainly you make the log that way?
Yes.
Well,
some parts, like the notches here on these logs here, are all done by hand. Some of the cantilevers were hewn. Some of them were done by a chainsaw mill. Like, where is one? Okay, you see that one up there?
Yeah.
You see how uneven? You can see the score mark. That I hewed that beam entirely. It's extremely labor intensive. It's very labor intensive, and it takes a lot longer. So if you but my purpose was not to create the thing by using authentic methods. My purpose is to get it done as quickly as I can, because the issue I face here is deterioration. I'm fighting against time and weather. I've got to get this barn under cover.
Yeah.
And in fact, until this week, this one I had tarps hanging all over this one because this one was completed first. So I tarped it to help protect it. And I also used a chemical called borate to all of the logs and cantilevers should be sprayed with that to help them give them some protection.
Otherwise, it's just 3 years.
That's a long time. It sure is. But you're talking about felling the tree, cutting the tree, dragging the links all the way from the mountain across the stream all the way up to here. Then you have to, saw it to length, prepare it, get it up. It's a process. It's a process.
So when you put the big beans, you have to do it yourself or you have somebody?
I did it. And the way I did that was partly with tractor and partly with I have this is a gin, sort of like what they would have called a gin pole, and at the top you see cables.
Right.
And so I had a pulley up there, and I used an electric winch, and I could on my truck, and I could hoist the beams up.
Okay. So you just do yourself.
I have had
that. Always have somebody come
no,
over.
I know. I've had zero help on this.
Zero help. Wow.
Yeah, I did it all myself. And part of that is just because it's harder to explain to somebody what you need them to do than you could go ahead and do it. Plus, to have somebody out here, they really have to know what they were doing.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can hurt them.
Yeah, there's that too. Okay, now this cantilever here was handed in as well with axes. You can see the marks, the axe marks. Yeah, you see it squared? See how it's squared? That's ideal, and then like parts of it, parts of this one are huge. The undersides of these cantilevers. And the reason, if you'll notice, the cantilevers taper. So like here it's thicker and here it's thinner. And that's intentional because you're trying to reduce the weight out on the end.
Right.
听下来这一集 ，Chris 主要是介绍这个谷仓都是他一个人干的，木材是从他自家的林子上面找的，然后呢用小卡车和绳索从林子里拖出来，自然干燥。Chris 家这个猫特别可爱，看我们来了以后特别好奇。让他也跟大家见面。下一集我们请 Chris 继续介绍一下他使用的什么工具，木头是怎样加工的。谢谢大家收看，欢迎订阅、点赞、转发，再见。